これお姉ちゃんにあげる。綺麗だわ。ありがとう。
I want to preface this video by saying that these are going to be my unfiltered opinions on the opening 6 hours of Silent Hill F. This is not a review, that will come after I beat the game a couple of times. Also, I did receive a free copy of the game by Konami, but only after I'd already pre-ordered and bought the digital deluxe version myself. I just wanted to be upfront about that before we begin. Right, Silent Hill F. Now, I've got some very mixed feelings about this one, guys. I'll be as deliberately vague about certain things as I can so that I don't spoil anything for you guys, because going into this one blind is probably the most effective way to play it. So if you need to, just listen to this video instead of watch it, but just know that the footage that I will be using will just be from the first hour or two of the game. So Silent Hill F is probably one of the biggest departures the series has taken, arguably ever. Not just for the fact that we aren't actually in Silent Hill, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time for that either. Instead, we're in 1960s rural Japan, but there seems to have been a lot more supernatural elements put into this game than ever before. Some pretty out there stuff happens, especially in this game's version of the Otherworld. As it stands at this moment in my 6 hours playtime, I'm intrigued to find out what the hell is going on and why certain things are much larger than life in this new Silent Hill story. I mean, it feels almost like an entirely different game than previous entries, and you might ask yourself, is this really even Silent Hill? But there are moments between the characters that definitely strike the drum of Silent Hill's hallmark tenets of mystery and ulterior motives. That rug pull feeling of a sense of familiarity being exposed for being much more sinister than originally thought. The gameplay is as you'd expect in terms of exploration. You plod about desperately looking for supplies through opening cabinets and taking different paths to find hidden goodies and whatnot. One thing I found odd was that there are no animations when opening things. Now, this is a minor point, but if you open a drawer or something like that, Hinako doesn't actually reach out and physically open things, like say in the Silent Hill 2 remake. This feels very mid-2000s in a way that isn't deal-breaking or anything. I just found it strange that with such high-quality graphics and animations, that there would be none for something as simple as opening a drawer, for example. You can also find bits of lore and flavor text to read which fill out the world or give clues to various puzzles, and we'll get onto the puzzles in a little bit, but I just want to say how much I really like this game's journal. Hinako will sketch illustrations and jot things down in her journal in a way that reminds me of how Heather Mason would speak to the player about her opinions on things when you examine them in Silent Hill 3. Like, you really get a sense of personability with the way that she writes about places or people that you visit and meet that go a long way to making her feel like a real girl. She's not a puppet. Hinako isn't a typical girl, though she thinks of herself as an unremarkable, boring plain Jane. She has a rebellious side to her which rejects how women in that time period are expected to behave, and this directly results in her relationships with her friends being full of contention, and I won't go into specifics, but it's very well written. This is by no means a woke game, like I hear some people on Twitter saying it is. That is frankly such a misfire of the term when applied to Silent Hill F. It's anything but woke, so don't be fooled by people who haven't even played it. I'm playing with the Japanese voices because I cannot stand how anime-sounding the English voices are portrayed, and there's already enough borderline anime moments in the game, I don't need cringy VA on top of that. No offense to the voice actors, it's just personally not my thing. The Japanese voices, however, are superb. They all sound believable and not too over the top. Some of the dialogue almost feels like you're watching a Japanese TV show at times, and it isn't distracting or off-putting. So far, I have no idea how this game could possibly tie into the other games in the series, but I do hope they somehow do that. The new spider lily motif is really visually appealing, and the spider lilies themselves have a lot of macabre symbolism in Japanese culture, but it would be nice to know why Silent Hill exists in Japan. But even if I knew the connection, I wouldn't spoil it for you here in this video, but I just wanted to say that I'm still as lost as you are on the overall connection to the other games, even after 6 hours in, which is roughly halfway through if the 12 to 14 hour runtime is accurate. So between cutscenes of typical Silent Hill weirdness, you fight monsters and solve puzzles. Pretty expected, huh? And the puzzles in this game are not Poppy Playtime level shit either. We're talking proper puzzles with not very obvious answers. I don't want to describe specifics because it would again spoil it for you, but just know that if you pick hard puzzles, you get hard puzzles. There are separate difficulties for the action and puzzles, much like the previous Silent Hill games and the 2 remake, which I think is a really cool trend that they are continuing. It means you can tailor the experience to your liking. You hate puzzles but you love combat? Put the puzzles on easy and put the combat on hard, and vice versa. The music in the game is delicious. The Fog World music is all composed by our favorite Akira Yamaoka, and he definitely took his melodic, eerie rock style and said like, you know, what if I just inject a whole load of Japan straight through the heart of it? And that's exactly what you get with Silent Hill F. There are still acoustic guitars picking sorrowful arpeggios, but they're now playing underneath more traditional Japanese instruments. There are tracks with melodies that sound like haunting hymns sung by a class of obedient schoolchildren. It's very creepy. It's very creepy, though quite different from the previous entries, but still distinctly Yamaoka's brand. The music that accompanies the fight scenes is composed with traditional Japanese drumming and a gargling throat noise you'd expect in some intense kabuki show. It's all very fitting to the scene that you're in, and so far, outside of a few of the slower tunes, it's not as instantly memorable as previous games, but that doesn't mean it's bad though, it's just different and understandably more Japanese. The Otherworld sections are composed by Kensuke Inagi, and they are much more Japanese in tone and delivery. A lot more mouth organ stuff with some off-timed bangs of a drum and the ringing of chimes that make you feel very off-kilter. These sections seem to be a lot more like background noise, whereas Yamaoka's pieces range from background ambience to full-on tracks that I actually look forward to listening to when they release the soundtrack. Item management is a big issue in this game. Gone are the infinite pocket spaces of James Sunderland, and this goes for more of a Silent Hill 4 style. You never really have enough space to carry everything you find, and you end up discarding things to make space for an item you're desperately in need of right now. And this would be better if you had an option to like use the item you're trying to pick up instead of store it, or just allow us to hold more things. This is a common gripe with survival horror games, and it's nothing new. Inventory management is just something you have to deal with, and choices have to be made to sacrifice things or leave items you find where you found them. The performance of the game is mostly really good. I'm playing this on a 5090 and a 9950X, so probably not the best test of how it runs on mid or lower end machines. But considering this is running on Unreal Engine 5, which as we are all aware suffers very often with its shader compilation, making stutters and frame hitching unbearable in some UE5 games, there are a few moments where the frames get a little funky here and there, but mostly it's a very smooth over 100 FPS with DLSS set to quality. And I've got all of the graphics settings kind of cranked all the way up to the max. And the image is very sharp and nice and clean too, which is, great to see. The cutscenes, however, are all locked at 30 FPS, and it's the same issue I had with the 2 remake. The gameplay is running at over triple the frames than the cutscenes are, so going from one to the other can be a little bit shite to look at. But again, it's not deal-breaking, this is just a minor bugbear. The shimmy-through loading screens are back with a vengeance here too. Lots of slow-ass shimmying between the buildings in the streets of Ebisugoka while the game renders in the path ahead. I do wonder when developers will come up with a new way of hiding loading screens, but yeah, overall, the performance is a delight to see a largely well-optimized Unreal Engine 5 game outside of whatever Embark Studios are doing for once. Now, I know this is going to be one of your main concerns, so let's talk about the combat, which I have a lot to say. But I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm not really enjoying it all that much. It consists of light and heavy attacks assigned to R1 and R2, or LB and LT respectively. There are focus attacks, they're kind of like preemptive counter attacks. You have to read enemy animations and their various tells in their wind-ups and notice when they flash red with this sort of glitch effect, and then be very quick on your reaction to get a big attack for massive damage and a chance to stun the enemy for a few seconds. There's a dodge button where Hinako does this sort of ninja-style anime dash, which has a lot of range, but it costs like half your stamina meter to use. However, if you time these perfectly just before an attack hits you, it will trigger a sort of slow motion effect where you regain all of your stamina and can come back with a volley of your own. This makes the push and pull of enemy encounters a case of reading their attacks and time when you can get one of these slow-mo dodges to dash in, deal some damage, and then dash out. Enemy attacks, however, range from coming out so quickly you didn't get time to dodge them, or waiting 3 business days for them to actually make a move as you circle each other in this sort of cartoonish-like duel, waiting for them to reach for their metaphorical gun so you can beat them to the punch. Enemies, much like in the gameplay reveal showed us, they don't recoil from being hit with anything other than heavy attacks, and it feels rather lackluster to hit them with anything but. There's also a lot of hit stop with the combat that makes it feel sort of artificially weighty, but it slows the entire thing down so much that it becomes like a bit of a slog. Couple that with knowing that each time you fight something that you will just literally get nothing out of it. They don't drop items, there's no XP, and the only thing that changes after each battle are your supplies, health, and weapon durability. Weapons do degrade, and I was initially worried about that going into the game, but if you're being clever with the combat systems available to you, at least so far, there seems to be just enough weapons laying about for you to have at least one on you and a few repair kits at all times. And for reference, I'm also playing the game on the hard combat difficulty setting, so I can't speak for story difficulty, but I do hear that it's a lot more forgiving. Now, I'm going to give a hot take here, okay? And one that I didn't expect I was going to be making before the game's release. When we saw the initial combat reveal, everyone was calling out the Souls-like comparison and criticizing it because Souls fatigue had been creeping into the internet consciousness for a while now. Whether or not people actually do have Souls fatigue, or if it was just a contrarian thing to say and make videos about, I don't know. But I actually think Silent Hill F would have a more enjoyable and replayable combat system if it was more Souls-like. Right, so hear me out here. Neobards and Konami set out to make a Silent Hill game with tough combat that you could overcome with perseverance and learning, and even becoming skillful with it. But essentially, they've just made the most annoying parts of Souls combat without the satisfaction or meaning to it. In Souls games, the challenge comes from animation-based threats and managing meters. Enemies will have wild, unpredictable attack strings that you have to be fully aware of in order to know where the openings are to deal damage, where you can roll safely to avoid damage, and making sure that you have enough health and stamina to pull it all off to a satisfying effect. But upon defeating tough enemies, you get souls, or the many variants of, to improve your abilities or take on tougher creatures, etc. Silent Hill F makes you fight tough enemies but gives you no reward for beating them. There is no XP. There's no way to level up Hinako's abilities outside of charms that you can wear, which have effects like bonus stamina, etc. And later on you do unlock a way to spend a currency of faith on upping Hinako's base stats like health, sanity, and stamina. But you don't earn this currency from killing creatures, only by offering items you find to shrines, which are like the checkpoints in the game. Sure, you can try and dash past some of the enemies, but you risk losing all of your stamina and not having enough to run to safety after you get past the enemy, and ultimately you're just taking damage regardless. It makes the combat just kind of like a dreadful ordeal, and that might have been their intention, you know, to make you feel kind of helpless in a way. But it does lead to frustration, and I do remember Konami saying that Hinako was meant to feel like a teenager and have that sense of desperate survival with the way she fights. But honestly, I don't think they really pulled that off here, because watching her dash about like she's just passed her tuning exam, or the speed that she can slice and bash things down with her bullet time slow motion skills that would make even Max Payne proud, she kind of feels like a badass. Now, this is just my opinion, of course, but my advice to Konami for any future combat-heavy Silent Hill games is make there be some kind of pull to actually engaging with the killing of manifestations. There needs to be a reason to kill them, not just because they block your path. Let the animations do the talking. We don't need anime-style hit stop. Make enemies recoil when you hit them. Have the weight be conveyed naturally, and as this game has more gore than previous entries, if you're gonna go that route, just go whole hog on it. Make the player wince with the results of their brutality. Enemies that look like you've indeed bashed them to pieces with a pipe. That would have a far more desperate survival feeling for the player, which I think is what you intended this to be like. At least it's what you said you wanted it to be like. These are just personal criticisms, of course. Your experience may vary, and you're also very valid if you end up loving the combat model. For me, it just isn't really it, but it does tell you how strong of a pull the narrative is that I can't wait to actually get back on the game and continue playing it. Because if the story wasn't interesting or alluring, I think I could probably check out at this point. So graphically, thematically, and narratively, this game is firing on all cylinders, but sadly, so far, at least in my experience, the combat hasn't been particularly positive. But I do look forward to completing the game and having some of these mysteries revealed to me so that I can get work on writing my full review. These have just been my initial impressions, and I hope it's helped you decide whether or not you want to take the plunge on the game. Please, if you could, give this video a like, give it a hype, that's the new feature now. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you when I'm looking at you. Thank you very much.